On October 27, 1962, the Soviet submarine B-59 silently drifted beneath the dark waters of the Caribbean Sea. On the surface above, the U.S. Navy fleet was circling, the tension so thick it could choke a man's breath. The world stood on the brink of nuclear war as the Cuban Missile Crisis reached its terrifying peak. One wrong command, one small mistake, and hundreds of millions would vanish in a firestorm of atomic destruction. Inside that submarine, the air was thick with the smell of oil, sweat, and fear. The temperature had climbed past 45 degrees Celsius. Fresh water had run out, the battery was dying, the ventilation had failed, and every breath felt heavier than the last. The exhausted crew hadn't made contact with Moscow for 4 days. All they knew was that dozens of American destroyers were hunting them, dropping depth charges to force them to the surface. To them, surfacing meant capture, surrender, or worse, confirmation that war had already begun and motherland might be nothing but ashes. In the cramped command room, the whirring of a broken fan mixed with the heated voices of desperate men. Captain Valentin Savitsky, commander of the submarine, slammed his fist on the metal table. He was convinced that war had already broken out. Beside him, the political officer Ivan Maslenikov agreed. In the torpedo room, beneath the sweltering steel floor, lay a single special torpedo, armed with a nuclear warhead as powerful as the bomb that once erased Hiroshima. One launch would erase the entire U.S. fleet above them. But in return, the United States and the Soviet Union would spiral into a nuclear inferno with no way back. Savitsky gave the order to arm the torpedo. Only one man stood in the way. Vasily Arkhipov, deputy commander of the 69th Submarine Brigade, was on board the B-59 as the overall mission commander. If he agreed, they would fire. If he refused, the torpedo would remain silent. Inside that stifling steel coffin, Arkhipov looked into the weary, desperate eyes of his crew. He understood the heat, the thirst, the fear pushing them to the brink of madness. But in that critical moment, he still believed it was not yet time to pull the trigger. Arkhipov kept his voice calm as he stopped Savitsky and Maslenikov. He argued there was no clear proof that war had begun. He believed that if they launched the torpedo, there would be no way back for humanity. Their heated argument echoed over the sound of labored breathing and the dull hum of dying machinery. On one side, the instinct to survive and absolute loyalty to orders. On the other, Archipov's unshakable faith that the lives of millions rested in the hands of 3 exhausted men, hidden under the ocean. In the end, Arkhipov convinced Savitsky to stand down. He proposed surfacing and signaling the Americans instead of unleashing nuclear hell. The B-59 surfaced, slowly cutting through the waves under the watchful eyes of dozens of U.S. warships. Deep inside its hull, the nuclear torpedo remained quiet and unused, locked in its cradle. Vasily Arkhipov and his crew returned to the Soviet Union. No one in the world knew that just minutes earlier, humanity had brushed the edge of annihilation. When Arkhipov came home, no medals were pinned to his chest. For many Soviet officers, he was a coward who refused to fight when he should have. Only his wife, his family, and the few men who were there knew what he had truly done. 3 decades later, when secret files were declassified, Western historians began to call Vasily Arkhipov by a title he never heard while alive: the man who saved the world. More than 20 years after Archipov's decision, another man quietly stood between humanity and nuclear doom. On the night of September 26, 1983, at a secret Soviet early warning bunker near Moscow, Stanislav Petrov, a lieutenant colonel in the Soviet Air Defense Forces, was on duty staring at his radar screens. Suddenly, alarms screamed. The system reported intercontinental ballistic missiles had been launched from the United States, heading straight for Soviet soil. If that were true, the Soviet Union would respond with thousands of nuclear warheads, ending the world within an hour. The protocol was clear. Petrov had to report immediately. The counterstrike order would follow in minutes. But amid the wailing sirens and flashing red lights, Petrov felt something didn't add up. Why only 5 missiles? Why didn't ground radar confirm the launches? He sat alone, eyes locked on the screens, cold sweat dripping down his back. If he failed to report an actual attack, he would be court-martialed and likely executed. But if he reported a false alarm, millions could die for nothing. Petrov took a deep breath and made his choice. False alarm. He told his superiors the warning was a mistake. Higher command demanded verification. Hours later, they discovered the truth. Sunlight reflecting off high-altitude clouds had triggered a satellite glitch. The next morning, Petrov went home. No medals, no parades. For years, no one knew that one man's hesitation had kept the world alive. Modern history is littered with moments just like this. In November 1979, NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, received an alert. 220 Soviet missiles were supposedly on their way to America. The red phone to the president rang immediately. Nuclear bombers were ordered to stand by. But a single unknown officer delayed the launch by demanding a cross-check with independent radar. All radars showed nothing. The terrifying launch warning? Computer test tape accidentally left running. The world escaped death because someone dared to ask, "Are we sure?" In hidden bunkers, anonymous meeting rooms, and sealed control centers, countless unnamed people have saved the world simply by refusing to push a button. They earned no statues, no medals, no national anthems. Some died alone in small apartments, forgotten by the same countries they saved. But if not for them, there would be no glittering cities today, no children walking to school, no world for you and me to sit here and listen to this story. We often honor those who start wars, who give the orders to fire. But sometimes the fate of humanity rests in the hands of those who decide not to. The ones who stand firm in the shadows, holding back disaster at the very last second when no one is watching. Vasily Arkhipov, Stanislav Petrov, and all the invisible heroes who have stepped between us and oblivion, they deserve to be remembered. Because the truth is, this world is more fragile than we like to believe. Peace is never guaranteed. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, subscribe to Behind the Glory. Together, we'll honor the silent heroes, the ones who saved the world, then quietly disappeared into the dark.